Welcome to freedomlovin.com, where we focus on building freedom in an unfree world. Through personal development, location independence, and passive income strategies. Now here's your host, Kevin Koskela.
Hey, it's Kevin here, and this is episode number 31. Thanks for listening, and in just a minute, I have an interview coming up with Jordan Harbinger of the Art of Charm podcast, and it was formerly known as the Pickup Podcast, and we're going to talk a little bit about girls and running a freedom business, travel, and him getting kidnapped, actually, a couple times. So, interesting interview, really exciting stuff, so stay tuned for that. I just got back from the Bitcoin conference in Las Vegas, and I just got back just a couple hours ago recording this, and yeah, it was a really interesting time. I learned a ton. It was 2 days straight. It was called Inside Bitcoins, and 2 days straight of just a whole lot of speakers. And so I'm just going to go through, I had some positives from it and some negatives, and just going to go through those. So the positives are that I learned a lot about kind of how Bitcoin operates. There were a couple of speakers, especially the guy from Bitcoin Armory, and that's security for Bitcoins, and he got up there and gave a really great presentation on just how the blockchain works and how Bitcoin started, and it's kind of cleared some things up for me, and then also it got me interested in using his service, the Armory, which seems like kind of the gold standard in securing your Bitcoins. So that was great. There was a guy that presented, a couple of people presented on Bitcoin China, and lots of interesting stuff going on there. The announcements that were made coming out of China, I guess it was a couple weeks ago now, were that I think it was kind of interpreted in the market as negative, that the government wasn't liking Bitcoin. They were going to try to kind of stamp it out, but it doesn't appear that way. It looks like actually some of the things that the government is saying are positive, and there were some misinterpretations in the language. So people thought that there were some negative things and they actually weren't. And then there was another announcement by Baidu that was much more insignificant than what was played up in the news stories. So a lot of good stuff coming out of China, and they are talking a lot about Litecoin, which is one of the other alt currencies that's gaining some traction. I've been kind of suspicious of some of the alt currencies because I don't know, the way I look at it is they're much more speculative than Bitcoin, which has already got established, and there's lots of people coming on board with Bitcoin. But with stuff like, with the coins like Litecoin, I see that there are some advantages, but hesitant to actually invest any money into it at this point. I may buy a little bit here coming up because I hear at the conference that there's going to be some big news about Litecoin here in the next 90 days coming out of China. So I think that's a reasonable thing to buy. I just wouldn't sink much money in it at this point. I'm probably just going to get maybe a couple $100 or something and just kind of see how that goes. But mainly I was just focused on Bitcoin at this point. But I did, of course, hear about a lot of other alternative currencies, altcoins, as they're called, at the conference, and it's interesting. There's definitely a lot out there. I think that a lot of them will be absorbed by Bitcoin. Like, they'll just build whatever the advantages are of these altcoins, they'll just kind of build that technology on top of Bitcoin. So that's kind of the way I see it. But let's see what else. Love the talk by my friend Trace Mayer. It was called Crypto Wars, Freedom of Speech and Freedom of Transaction. I was impressed that he actually got up there and said some stuff that no holds barred, and, kind of just telling it like it is, and really kind of spelled out, like, what are the advantages of Bitcoin in terms of, helping the world out. And he called the US dollar, he held up a dollar and called it Bernanke coin. And the differences are that you cannot print Bitcoin, that with Bernanke coin, you can print them, that there's a few people that are in charge of printing those, and they can do that all day long, and they can use it for all sorts of nefarious purposes. And Bitcoin is, on the other hand, decentralized, and there's nobody controlling it. So if we can start using a currency like Bitcoin, which is much more private and, like I said, decentralized, we will see a lot less violence in the world. And he made a great case for that. And so that was one of my favorite talks. And then as far as the negatives, there was way too much talk about regulation and tax compliance, basically just sucking up to the government And I think that's U.S. based. And so I really liked what Andreas Antonopoulos said about, he talks about the other 6 billion. So we're sitting here in the U.S. and people are all concerned about what the government's going to do. What are they going to say? What kind of regulations are going to come out about Bitcoin? Whereas you have countries like Argentina, which that's the last thing on their minds. They're just trying to have a currency that works, or something that works, and something that can actually hold value. So their country is a mess. Their economy is a mess right now because the government just keeps making all kinds of crazy regulations and rules, and they are inflating the currency away so it's worth nothing. So their peso is just going away, and so people are scrambling down there right now. And the idea of something being legal or illegal is pretty much irrelevant because everything there is illegal. So they have to do whatever they have to do to survive, and so they are ripe for Bitcoin. So from what I'm hearing, they are picking up Bitcoin quite a bit, and it's only going to grow. So anyway, the idea of the other 6 billion is that the looking at Bitcoin from just an American or U.S. basis is actually missing most of the picture, because most of the rest of the world, or a lot of the rest of the world, it is a whole different story on how they view currency and how they view it. They don't have a problem understanding Bitcoin, whereas here it's a lot of like trying to explain it, and then people immediately go to, well, how do taxes work and stuff like that, whereas in other places it's just an automatic, like, oh, I get it, how can I buy some? And how can I start using it? So anyway, the other debate along these lines was about the idea of legitimacy and trying to make Bitcoin legitimate. And there was a little bit of a panel. There was 4 people on a panel, and a couple of people got into it. And Andreas, who I just mentioned, was part of that panel, and his comments were great. I mean, he just said, what's this idea of legitimacy? Where, it's legitimate just by the very sake that it's being used already. We don't need to prove it to some group of people that happens to be one of the most corrupt and immoral organizations on the planet, like the U.S. government. So it's totally ridiculous to try to make this thing legitimate in their eyes when you have, again, all these people around the world, and it's a decentralized currency anyway. So this is a peer-to-peer kind of thing where it's person to person. You're just making a transaction with one other person. So if one transaction is made, then that's legitimate. So it's just a trade. It's just you're trading something for Bitcoin. So there's no need to prove any kind of legitimacy to some panel or some government or anything like that. So I thought that was a great point. And so, yeah, that was it. I got back today, and I was happy to see that we have another 5-star review on the Freedom Lovin' podcast. And this one is from Mike A. Ruiz. And he says, I came across this podcast a few months ago, and I enjoy it immensely. The guests are interesting, the topics are diverse, and the overall theme of finding freedom in an unfree world is exactly the information I'm looking for in my life right now. One suggestion, Kevin, put up a Bitcoin tip widget or address QR code on your website. Yeah, great. Thanks, Mike. I really appreciate that. And I actually did have a Bitcoin tip widget. I don't know if you call it a widget, but it was the Coinbase. I think it is a widget. It's a Coinbase Bitcoin donation widget. So that was up there, and then something went wrong with the code, and it wasn't working. So I took it down, and for some reason I haven't put anything back up there yet. So, and I haven't even checked to see if I had any donations before that. I think I had a couple, but they were really small, which is great. But I will put that up. By the time this recording goes out, I will have a Bitcoin donation button or tip widget up on the site on the homepage. So if you want to do that, you can go ahead and go to freedomlovin.com and throw in a little bit of Bitcoin. It would be awesome. I'm not monetizing this podcast, and I do love doing it. I love the topics and talking to people and getting all kinds of feedback like this. So I will keep doing it, but I would love to have your donations. If you want to also support the show, I would also love if you could give a review and a rating on iTunes. So you can just open up iTunes and type in the Freedom Lovin' podcast, and you'll get there, and then you can just put in your rating and review, and I'll read it on the next show with your name. So without further ado, here is my interview with Jordan Harbinger. Have a great week, and go out there and build some freedom. Cool. Well, I'm stoked to have Jordan Harbinger on the show today. Jordan is an American lawyer turned social dynamics expert. He is the owner and co-founder of The Art of Charm, a dating and relationships coaching company, the co-host of Pickup Podcast, which is now The Art of Charm podcast, a relationship advice and social dynamics talk show, and the the co-host of Game On, a Sirius XM satellite radio talk show devoted to the art of meeting and attracting women. His website and podcast are at theartofcharm.com and theartofcharmpodcasts.com. Jordan, welcome to Freedom Lovin'.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been listening to your show for a while now, off and on, since probably about 2011. And I really like your show. And the only reason I stopped listening for a while is for some reason my feed went out and it wasn't picking up your podcast. But I love the guests you have, but I also love the way you do the show, it's a little bit different than how a lot of people do interviews, which is you're actually interactive with whoever you're talking to and you're actually engaging with them. And I find that to be much more appealing for me in terms of better than like the traditional like question answer type of thing. So.
Yeah, I think that the question answer type thing, and I hope I don't throw you under the bus here, I think that's a super amateur way to do a show. And I get why people do it because it's easy. You're like, hey, and a lot of the media appearances I get are like that too. It's just a mark of a broadcaster that hasn't prepared well, where they go, hey, here, guest, send me 5 questions you want me to ask you. And I'm like, as a guest, I'm kind of mixed because I'm like, well, this sucks because I know it's going to be a sort of amateur hour, but it's also kind of good because it means it's like, cool. Well, all right. Question number 1, why is the Art of Charm so amazing and everybody should sign up for it? You know what I mean? But I mean, that doesn't make for an interesting show for the most part. So I never run my show like that because I don't want to make an infomercial series for a bunch of authors or speakers. I want to ask people questions where they go, I'm not sure I want to answer that. And then I go, cool, you don't have to, but I'm not going to edit this out. So you might as well save yourself now.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure, I know you had the broken feed and we had that happen a long time ago and God knows how many subscribers that cost us. But when we fixed it finally, one of the first shows that we did was, I won't mention their name, but she was like, I know how to find out what insecurities people have and where they're going wrong in relationships, and then we can fix it. And I go, cool, how do you find those things out? And she said, oh, well, I have a way to do it. And I was like, well, you should tell us how it is. And she goes, well, it's proprietary. And I said, cool. Well, if you don't want to tell us, I can just delete the show right now because it won't be interesting if you're not going to share anything. Yeah. She goes, okay, fine. Well, I'm certified in palm reading and I read people's palms to find out where their insecurities are. And I was like, you've got to be effing kidding me. So I didn't let that fly very much at all. I poked a million holes in it, told her that's not how science works, a million other things. She was not super happy with me. And at the end of the show, she goes, you know what? You can just edit that out. And I was like, hell no, I'm not editing that out.
Oh, yeah.
For one thing, it's comedy in its finest. And two, the last thing I'm going to do is edit you so that you don't sound as crazy as you obviously actually are.
Yeah.
So, like, you know what I mean? There's just no way that I'm going to sit here and essentially endorse or help you edit your message to my audience to sound more credible than you actually are. Yeah. Because, when you're on a show, you're trying to put your best foot forward as best you can. And if your best foot makes you sound like a batshit crazy chick, then I don't want to know what you're like when you're on an off day, We do a lot of editing, but mostly it's for the convenience of the listener. If we got to take a leak, I don't have a 2-minute pause in the middle of the show, so I'll cut that out. But if somebody flubs and goes, I only do this for money and I hate people in real life, I'm leaving that in there, and that's all there is to it. And maybe if you don't want that in there, you should be in a different business or learn how to do an interview without throwing yourself under the bus.
Exactly. Having said that, question number 1.
Right.
Here we go.
Amateur.
Yeah. So that's a good transition. Yeah. So what is your background? How did the Art of Charm come about?
At first, I worked at a law firm on Wall Street, but before that, of course, I was in law school. And what happened in law school, I got an internship with a really big, great law firm, a British one, and also a New York Wall Street firm. So I took these, and the guy who hired me for one of them, he was never around. He was supposed to be my mentor. He's never around. Finally, he had like mandatory coffee with the people he hired. So I got a chance to talk to him one-on-one, and I thought to myself, okay, I'm just going to be blunt and ask him where the hell he is all the time, because the rumor had it he made more money than all the other partners. So I decided, all right, where are you? How come you're never in the office? Are you working at another firm? Do you just work from home? Do you have like small children or something that you're taking care of? What's the deal? He said, no, actually, I'm doing things that are more important than office work. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'm bringing in a lot of business. I said, yeah, I heard as much, but how can you do that if you're not in the office? And he laughed essentially, and said, you don't bring in business by sitting here in the office. The business is out there. It's not in here. So I realized that his playing jiu-jitsu and golf and going to weddings and parties and taking people on vacation and doing all kinds of stuff, that was actually more important than what all the other partners were doing, which was like calling the client and making sure this document was sent in on time and all this other garbage that these lawyers were doing, which I obviously thought looked crappy anyway, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, wait a minute, let me get this straight. Going out, being social, selling the idea of the firm, being a charismatic presence and networking is what makes you more money than the stuff that I hate doing. So I was like, okay, no brainer. I'm going to get good at this stuff. Instead of working on all the stuff that like everybody says is mandatory for a legal profession that I think sucks, I'm going to work on these social skills that seemingly nobody in my class at law school really had anyway. And so I started to focus on that stuff. And we started the podcast. I met up with AJ, who's my business partner now, and he was awesome with chicks. So I thought, okay, if I've got networking skills and he's got like literally just game all day with girls, like we need to team up and teach each other this stuff. So we basically took over Ann Arbor. We went to Michigan. We took over Ann Arbor by networking with all the bartenders and the door guys and all of these other personalities that we knew from just going out all the time. We had girls all the time, and it was a good experience. And what it showed me was that, like, hey, listen, the real secret sauce in life is that old cliche rings true. It's all about who you know. It's very little about what you know. And that's actually, most people use that cliche to complain about how the system's not fair and how merit doesn't mean anything. Yeah. But I would say for our purposes, thank God it's all about who you know, because unless you're one of those guys who's like, I like working 20 hours a day and being super stressed out and never having enough time and always being bested by like some random guy who found some little edge somewhere to do something faster than you. Like, unless you like that, and very few people do, like that's sort of the exclusive domain of like the Asian guy or the Indian guy that like sits in the corner, or the cliched, that type of thing. Yeah. Those guys, unless you're one of those guys, you should be thanking your lucky stars that all it is a hell of a lot of networking and which is a learnable skill set. Yeah. It's very hard to learn how to be lucky or learn how to work harder than everybody else. And there's always going to be something or somebody that outworks you, unless you're just fully willing to be miserable every day, all day. But networking is like, wait a minute, I get to go do fun stuff and be cool, and that's going to beat out 99% of the other guys out there. Like, where do I sign up for that? So I decided, hey, you know what? There's no turning back for me.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, and it's kind of how you run your podcast, too, because you're talking to people that you might not be able to get a hold of if you didn't have the show, right? I mean, it's like You can bring people on and say, hey, I have this show, and you can come on and then you'll get exposure and all that. So definitely, and that's one thing I've, since I've had this podcast, it's like I can just kind of email people and say, hey, do you want to come on my show? And you get to network with people that you never would have before, which is much better than trying to do SEO and build backlinks or whatever. So
exactly. Like the Rolodex I have now is insane. And I'm not saying that to brag. It's just a fact. And it's also like the point of the question, right? Like, I can call Tim Ferriss and go, dude, random question, and I can get a reply, right? And I know that sounds ridiculous, but for people who know Tim Ferriss, he's got 17 layers of email assistants that you usually have to go through.
Exactly.
It's a lot easier to text somebody who goes, oh, hey, what's up, Jordan? Yeah, actually, you know what? I use this. I'll have somebody send you one. Yeah. That's a lot easier. It's really nice to be able to watch an episode of Shark Tank and then send a message to Damon John and say, hey, man, why did you really not give this guy a deal? Because I'm doing something similar, and have him write back, hey, listen, I'm really busy, but my assistant's going to send you a white paper on our due diligence on that deal and why it had a huge hole in it. This isn't knowledge that you can get anywhere else, right? And I'm thinking that might have saved me a big headache when I'm pitching somewhere else to high-end people like him. So, normally you reach out to somebody like that and they're like, whatever, who are you? Thanks for the fan mail. File it wherever they file things like that, or never gets read. It's kind of nice to be like, oh, hey, I have a question for you. And they say, oh, yeah, my book sold more books on your show than it did on the Today Show. What can I do for you? Oh, you want an email introduction to somebody at Twitter? No problem. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so,
totally.
And that networking, there's an intensive process for it, but it's actually fun. I mean, I don't think a lot of people have this image in their head that like networking sucks and you have to go to all these lame events and mixers and pretend to be nice to people and then throw business cards in their face. Real networking is not like that at all. Real networking is like, oh, Kevin needs an iPhone developer. I totally know a guy. Here's an email intro. And then next time I need something, you're like, oh, yeah, you hooked me up with that iPhone developer. I really appreciated that. That worked out really well.
Right.
And meanwhile, that iPhone developer is like, dude, Jordan hooks me up with business left and right. Like, when Jordan needs an app fixed, I'm going to just do it for him because he's a really good ally. He's in my corner.
Right.
You know, that took me like 5 minutes, right, to write that email, not even. And then the other half of networking is like, oh, so-and-so from this startup company is having an open bar mixer on a boat in the middle of summer and I'm invited. Cool. Yeah. I'll bring 5 friends of mine that are also decent, cool entrepreneurs. We'll go have fun on this boat. And now everybody that they met is now somehow tertiary related to my network. They're in my Rolodex or at least tangentially, right? Sure. I can reach out to those people and they go, yeah, I met so-and-so on that boat party you brought me to. I mean, that doesn't sound like hard work. Drinking on a boat with a bunch of cool people who are really smart is not really that tough when it comes down to it.
Yeah, that's really what it's all about. So now on your podcast, so I'm interested in what you're doing from a couple angles. I mean, one is just the pickup stuff it's fascinating. And I don't even know if you call it that anymore, but just the male-female dynamics and dating and all that is a really interesting topic. Now, so you changed the name of your podcast from Pickup Podcast to The Art of Charm, but it goes pretty far beyond just picking up girls. So I guess what is pickup and what are you doing that's different?
Pickup is essentially an old term used by a lot of those like pickup artist guys. And it basically has to do with like meeting and attracting women. And we do a lot of that, but it's honestly like 5% of what we do now.
Yeah.
We focused on that and we got really good at that as a company and we got really good at teaching that. And then we kind of were like, okay, you know what? That's fun and it's a cool party trick, but really no one cares about it once they get good at it. Yeah. And since we can make guys good at it in a really short period of time, we decided to give guys more advanced tools right off the bat. So once we started doing that, we started giving guys the tools to like project charisma, confidence, which is attractive but also useful in a business environment. We started talking about how to deal with difficult people, how to get people to trust you, how to get people to like you, how to get people to want to do things for you. So persuasion skills, how to deal with difficult people, how to turn people onto your side when they maybe don't like you initially or you make a bad first impression, how to recover from that, how to be vulnerable, how to create really strong personal connections with both guys and girls and in business, manage relationships, how to tell a compelling story, how to sell yourself, like really advanced skills. So it was great because once we started doing that, we stopped competing with all these clowns with like light up necklaces and fuzzy hats and all that crap. And we started getting clients that were like intelligence agencies and military special forces operations guys, those types of people and entrepreneurs who are like, listen, I work in this business and I need to make connections with all of these types of people every day or I'm done. So we're like, good, you need elite social skills. You need an elite level of networking that goes beyond the whole make sure you reach out to 3 people a day. Like that's fine and good, but you need a legit nuanced set of skills that you can use to develop this network. You can't just follow the crap that you've Googled on WikiHow or you can't just read an ebook or a print book on how to network with people. Like that's all fine and good, but it goes beyond the academics. Like if you want to get people to like you, you need to know how to get people to like you and you need to practice getting people to like you. And you need to have a coach that says, hey man, you're doing this, and this wrong. And you're welcome. I just saved you 15 years of feedback that you probably wouldn't have gotten on your own ever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's really important because to use dating as an analogy, you can go out on 100 dates and you're probably not going to have a girl go, you know what, it didn't work out because something that you were doing made me feel like you were invading my psychological space and I really didn't like that. So I felt like I couldn't be vulnerable with you and that's why I didn't want to see you again. Nobody gives that kind of feedback because even if you were coherent enough and self-aware enough to realize that's why, which, no one is really unless you're trained.
Yeah.
Chances are they're not going to reach out and tell you that because they don't owe it to you and they're afraid you're going to freak the hell out if they do anyway. So they're just going to go, nah, and next, and you're probably never going to learn that lesson in your whole life.
And then they don't even know. They may not even know. I mean, at some level they do, but they can't articulate it. So
Right. That's why girls go, I don't know, he's just creepy. But like at the Art of Charm, for example, you're never going to get feedback like, I don't know, that was just creepy, because that's not real feedback.
Right.
The real feedback is, well, actually, you lean over a little bit too far and you face people a little bit too directly. And so what that does is shows sort of too much of this type of interest, and invades her psychological space. It makes her feel like she needs to regain it by backing up. And what that does is triggers these few things in her brain that trigger fight or flight. So here's how you fix it. We rotate you and we do this, and we're videotaping you so you can see yourself doing this. And you go, oh, that does look like it would be uncomfortable if it happened to me. I had no idea I did that to people. You know, that one lesson alone is worth the price of admission for coming to a training class here in LA. And imagine doing that for a whole week for 60 hours. You know, you're going to learn how to sit, stand, walk, talk. You're going to learn different eye contact. We're going to give you a lot of drills and exercises to really improve and tweak a lot of the things that were making you less attractive or making people sense something about you wasn't quite right. You know, there's no difference in a woman's mind, for example, somebody who's nervous and somebody who's dangerous. There's very little difference. Yeah. So that's freaking scary, because that means, Kevin, that you and I can walk into a bar, and if I am nervous because I had a stressful day at work and my boss said, you know, I'm going to fire your lazy ass, you son of a bitch, right? Like, you're taking me out for a drink because you're a good friend and I'm shaky. If I talk to a girl in that situation, she's going to be like, dude, that guy Jordan, he's sketchy. He's up to something. Yeah. Meanwhile, I'm shaken up from my whole day. She doesn't know that. So if you're not aware of those things, you can never correct the problem. Yeah. Right? So you get a lot of guys who go into an environment like that and they're like, man, I'm divorced. I haven't been to a bar in a decade to meet people. I don't know what's going on. I'm super uneasy. When you're interacting with women, when that guy's interacting with women, they're going, I don't know, man, that divorce guy, he's creepy. Something's wrong with him. There's something wrong. Meanwhile, he's nervous as hell because he hasn't had to do that. So the bar, the environment, the social pressure, that's what's making him nervous. Not the idea that he's going to, like, you know, shove you in a trunk, but women only sense what's on your body. So if you're nervous, they're nervous. If you're scared, they're scared. If you're confident and calm, they're confident and calm. Which one of those skill sets and which one of those sets of feelings do you think is better and for generating attraction and comfort, right?
Yeah. So this is something I've always wondered, is why is it that there are so many resources for men out there on how to improve themselves like this for women? Although yours is kind of more comprehensive, not necessarily just for dating and meeting chicks, but why is it that they're, like, everywhere you go on the internet, there's somebody teaching on how to meet women and how to get women and all that, but look at the other way around. How many resources do women have? Are they trying to improve themselves and try to figure out how to meet guys? I mean, there's some, but I just don't see it nearly as much.
I guess the answer to that question can be more entertaining depending on the level of PG-13 language I can use on your show, but
what you want to say is fine.
I would say this. If a guy needs to invest a bunch of time and money into self-improvement, which I would recommend, I spend a crap load of money on coaching and training for myself. Anybody, and as a side note, a lot of guys go, oh, I don't need that. That's stupid and it's a ripoff. The Navy SEALs, Green Berets, those guys have millions of dollars worth of training, and those are the guys that jump at the chance to learn skills like we're teaching at the Art of Charm. If you think that learning this stuff shouldn't cost you money, or that you feel some sort of ego bump from having to learn this stuff, quote unquote, then realize that that mindset is destroying you and not helping you grow. Anybody who thinks they don't need training is just protecting their own ego, and that's the surest way to stay mediocre for the rest of your life. But basically, women have a crap ton of resources to learn how to date better. They have magazines, they have their friends. Women grow up talking about this stuff. If anybody out there has a little sister or a wife or anything like that, or even just had a bunch of female friends growing up that they were really, really close to, chances are they heard girls go, oh my God, did you see the way he looked at me today? Yeah, what was that all about? Yeah. Think about the last time you did that as a man. The answer is probably never. You've probably never gone, yeah, did you see the way Angela looked at me? What do you think that means? I totally noticed that, said no guy ever, right. You know? And I think probably it was this, but girls will spend 3 hours discussing that look that Todd gave her at, gym class. And they start doing that when they're teenagers. So by the time they're 25, that sideways glance that you gave her could mean 5 different things, only one of which is in your favor.
Yeah.
And so, but meanwhile, she walked up next to you, stood next to you at the bar, smiled, said she liked your jacket, ordered a drink, asked you where you were from. And you're like, yeah, whatever. She was just being nice. And she goes back to her friends and goes, man, I tried to get that guy Kevin to pay attention to me, and he just would not do it.
Yeah.
So us as guys, we have to be beaten over the head with this stuff, and we still don't get it. Meanwhile, women have this very nuanced way of discussing, learning, and thinking about this, and they get that from a variety of resources, not the least of which is, their own friends and the fact that they have circles that are comfortable talking about this. If you are an Art of Charm guy, you have a circle of guys and coaches that you can bounce things off of that you would never have had before, ever, in any environment. But if you're a regular guy and you don't have access to this type of coaching or the alumni network that we have, imagine what it sounds like going up to your friends and going, yeah, so, I went out with this girl and she did this and this and this and this and this and this and this. What do you think? Your friend's going to be like, I don't fucking know, dude. Why are you even asking me that? Just have another beer and shut up. Quit whining about how some girl doesn't like you.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, you're like, but I've been married to her for 5 years. I'd like to fix this, Yeah. And you've got like one choice. You go to therapy, and the therapist goes, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. So I'm going to start with, what's your relationship like with your mom, Kevin?
Right.
And then you talk about that for 3 years. And then meanwhile, your marriage disintegrates and your therapist goes, whatever, dude. I don't know. I'm divorced too. I don't know. So we don't have a whole lot of resources as guys. We have a lot of crappy PUA pickup artist resources, but those only make guys weird. They don't really help most of the time.
Yeah.
And so what we strive to do at AOC, at the Art of Charm, is we don't really focus on all those weird tactics, tricks, and stuff like that. We focus a lot more on the mindset, and that's why it's really powerful, because the mind follows the body and the body follows the mind. So if you've got your mindsets right, you're set up for success. You're going to look attractive. You're going to speak attractive. You're going to think attractive, and you're going to be attractive, and you're going to be confident, charismatic, and you're going to be able to set up that network, because it's much more about who you are than it is about what you do.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, what you say and all that is kind of less important than how you present yourself. So that totally makes sense. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about your business. How much freedom, that we talk about freedom a lot on my show, how much freedom does your business give you in terms of, like, compared to how when you were a lawyer, what does this world look like to you? Oh, yeah. Compared to being a lawyer, there's so much more free. I mean, today I woke up, I was a little tired, so I slept about an hour later than I normally would. I decided to hang out with my girlfriend, so we did a little bit of exercise. I made a couple phone calls. I had a radio appearance. Then we went to a coffee shop, worked a little bit, had some lunch, decided to go look at fish because she wants a fish. I had a Chinese lesson. I made a bunch of phone calls. I wrote some content for our newsletter, things like that. As a lawyer, I was always in the office at a certain time doing things I didn't care about until really late at night. And now I can do my job for the most part from just about anywhere. My major limitation is being near a studio if I have a lot of stuff to record, or at least a quiet place so I can make certain calls and things like that. And when we have our programs and boot camps, I've got a large staff of instructors that do a great, phenomenal job. Nobody's new. Nobody's a neophyte. They're all amazing experts. And then I chime in and go in as necessary. But really, I have so much more freedom. It's pretty much unbelievable. And that's in addition, that's just on a daily basis. That's in addition to not worrying about whether or not I'm going to show up and some jerk 7 levels above me called a meeting and decided to lay everybody off because he wanted to buy a Maserati instead of paying our, bonuses that year or whatever. You know what I mean? Yeah. There's a lot of just control over, when people go, the recession, it's hard to get a job. I'm like, yep, I don't really know what that's like. I don't have that problem. I'm not looking for a job. I never will be. I will always be able to create my own job, always, forever. That's awesome. So you have basically people that are kind of running the show for you at this point. Yeah, and it's not that they're doing it for me. I mean, they're doing it with me, and I've got business partners that, like, for example, AJ is coaching constantly. Mm-hmm.
I've got the other head instructors working constantly. I'm working constantly, but maybe, there's another guy that all he does is work with our marketing team to make sure that people are reading our stuff. And, I'm out there doing interviews and shows, and that's getting people in the door and getting people interested in, the topics that we discuss at the Art of Charm. And then, AJ's inventing curriculum with Johnny and things like that. So it's not that I've outsourced anything. It's just that we've expanded to focus on our strengths rather than trying to shore up our weaknesses, which is why, or I should say, which is how any company starts. You go, oh crap, somebody's got to sell stuff. And I'm like, maybe I'll figure that out. And then it turned out to be something I was actually good at. And now I love it. Right. But we've been fortunate enough to do really well with what we're doing. So we're able to hire people who are actually good at marketing. They're good at editing things. They're good at writing. So I don't have to do things that I'm not good at and spend 5 hours doing 1 hour worth of work because I stink at it, So I want to just be wary. Like, the people that are teaching the programs right now are teaching because they're better at teaching this stuff, at least the stuff that they're teaching, than I am. Right. They're not doing it because I'm like, screw it, I want to drink margaritas on the beach today. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, that's not why they're doing it. And I'm damn involved in every program that there is, because I want to make sure that when guys fly in from freaking Australia, which happens, like, we run 3 programs a month. If there's Americans in it and there's nobody from Mexico, Australia, China, Europe, or, somewhere else in Asia, if there's only Americans in a program, it's like, wow, what happened here? There's always people from all over. And so the fact is, I can't just like phone it in and be like, whatever, I didn't feel like doing any work this week. Right. Those guys would be disappointed. And I want to make sure that everything is A++ quality all the time. So freedom wise, I have a ton of it in terms of being able to do the job where I want to, but I wouldn't be the type of guy that's like, I just want to be backpacking through Southeast Asia and never worry about my business. It's all automated. Yeah. There's people who do that. More power to them. It sounds really lame to me. I don't need to be on vacation my whole life. Right. I love what I'm doing. We're changing lives and leaving a legacy. I feel like there's a sort of a common misconception that, like, if you're working more than 4 hours a week, you're a freaking loser because you don't get how to outsource everything. And I'm like, dude, I'm not selling, recycled toilet paper to people on the internet. I'm selling life-changing training, and it's intense. It's an intense process, and there's no substitute. Like, I could probably hire some schmo who makes $15 an hour to teach pickup boot camp, but I'm not doing that because that's not what we do here. Yeah.
What are some of the obstacles that you've had to overcome, like some of the biggest obstacles that you had to overcome in terms of your business?
Oh, man. I mean, the obstacles that I've had to overcome in this business are pretty ridiculous. I don't even know which ones are going to be like the most relevant to share. I mean, at the end of the day, I think the key overarching concept is that everything was pretty avoidable and largely our fault. We had a lot of obstacles that really should have sunk the ship. And fortunately, I work with a lot of smart people so that anytime somebody did something really dumb, we were able to figure out a way around it, or at least have somebody who's really like gotten a lot out of the Art of Charm bail us out. And, we've had a couple of really cool mulligan moments where we're like, thank God this guy had an extra 50 grand laying around or whatever. Yeah. I mean, we had hired people that we trusted because they talked a big game, and we entrusted them with our money, which we lost. And looking back, people who are listening are like, these guys are dumb. But really, when you're starting a business and you're 25 and everybody's BFFs, you're like, whatever, I don't care. We're doing so well. Meanwhile, you've got like a guy working for you who's running the business on his own personal credit cards and like not telling you, you know what I mean? Or whatever. So, and this is years and years ago. So I want people to be cognizant of the fact that the reason I'm able to talk about it is because now we've fixed all these issues. We have a professional business team. We have our ducks in a row. But man, we had hired all these interns, and we were like, hey, more is better because more interns means more work. And what we did is we hired so many people that we had nothing for them to do, but we just had to manage them. Yeah. So everybody who was capable of doing anything was managing people who were not capable of doing anything. Huh. So we had all these interns, they were like watering plants, and they were screwing around with each other, and they were making messes that we had to clean up, and partying, and, living in our house. And just making friends with our coaches who would want to go out instead of working. And it was just a huge mess. And years later, I saw a post on some message board that was like, I used to be an intern there, and those guys are jerks. They didn't teach me anything. All I did was water plants and flirt with the girls who worked there. And then luckily, somebody who had their head on straight responded to that post and was like, let me get this straight. You got fired from an internship from distracting all the other workers and not doing anything but farting around on Facebook? Sounds like they're not as dumb as you say, right? Yeah. But, you don't get a lot out of that. I mean, we had other obstacles that was like, oh, you've hired all these people. How are you going to pay them? Oh, well, they're going to start doing work and then we're going to grow, ... And it's like, no, you need to figure out how to do a lot of things on your own. And the problem that we did, we just started to hire people and we never figured out how to do the job that they were supposed to do. We just tried to outsource stuff. Right. And that's great. It's good to hire somebody who's an expert at something that you're weak at, but you still need to get yourself to the point where you know how their job works enough that you could do it in a pinch, if not as well as them. Right. So what we did is we were like, hey, we're just going to hire salespeople because none of us are good at selling anything, right? Yeah. Or so we thought. So we hired a salesperson, and they did a really good job until they decided, screw this, I'm going to get another job and just not tell anyone. Mm-hmm. So he got another job selling chemicals and paper products, and we were like, hey, sales are really down these last 2 months, and we're really running in the red. What's up? And he went, oh, yeah, you know what? I meant to tell you that I'm quitting in a week. I haven't done any work in 2 months. I know I kind of should have told you guys earlier, but, we're all buddies, and I didn't want to hurt your feelings. And I went, so instead you decided to ruin my entire life by flushing my business down the toilet. And he was like, well, I'll teach you how to sell. And so what ended up happening, and this is seriously by the grace of whatever divine presence might be out there, we flew him out to California. He taught me how to sell. I turned out to be pretty good at it in a natural sense, and now I do a lot of that. I was able to pull us out and double our sales in like a year. Wow. So that was just pure freaking luck, though. Like, had he come out here and tried to teach me how to sell and I was bad at it, I would be a lawyer and there'd be a lot of other people with no jobs. Yeah. So there's a lot to be said for knowing how to do somebody else's job. It would have helped us a lot if I'd been able to also, say, for example, sell. At that point, we hired IT guys and website guys, and we didn't know anything about that. And so what they would do is they would bill us thousands of dollars and go, oh, yeah, this is a really complicated process. This requires a lot of man hours and a lot of design help. And then so AJ would go, you know what, I'm going to learn how to code stuff so that when there's a real pinch and these guys aren't available, I can fix it. And what he did was he learned that these guys were not doing a goddamn thing, right. And they were billing us through the nose 25 hours for projects that would take maybe like 2 hours if you didn't have your head firmly planted in your ass. Yeah. And they were like, oh, we're so busy with all these other things going on. Meanwhile, they just weren't working. So we could fix and do what they were doing in 4 weeks. We could do it in a night. And it was like, oh, we never want to work with them again. But now we're not beholden to that. We do outsource our IT. But when the guy goes, oh, this is because the cantilever C++ JavaScript thingamajig is broken, we can be like, you know what? That actually makes no sense. And we think you're full of shit. Yeah. So you're fired. And we're going to fix it, and we're going to hire somebody else who's a straight shooter. Because you can't hire somebody who knows what they're doing if the only qualification that they know what they're doing is that they tell you they know what they're doing. Yeah. There's a problem there. So when I hire people to work like a customer service role, which I've been doing for 8 years, and they go, oh, yeah, you know what we do is we leverage our CRM and our blah, 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 this, that, and the other thing. And I go, cool, but you're not personable. You seem like a total dick. I don't want you working in my customer service. I'd much rather have a girl who's not technically oriented, but a total doll on the phone handling my customer service than a guy who's like, I have this set up so it fully automates. Yeah. I don't care if it's automated. I really don't care if it's automated. I don't care how much work you and I have to do together to make this work. I want my customers happy. And if that requires an extra hour from me per day and costs twice as much, oh, freaking well. Yeah. That's what I want, and that's how it's going to get done. And so, a lot of people, entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs especially today, are just hell-bent, and I'm sorry if this is members of your audience or maybe even you, they're hell-bent on like, I don't want to do any work. I want to work 1 hour a month maintaining my business and cashing my checks, and then I want to be free. And I'm like, cool, man, but here's the problem. You've never built anything. So until you've built something and busted your ass doing it and figured out ways to outsource things and automate things without sacrificing quality, the idea of building a business that you don't have to run is, to me, largely ridiculous if you want to do either something that makes a lot of money or do something that changes the world. You can't do that on autopilot, because if it was that easy, then other people would be doing it en masse. There's definitely ways to make like $4 to $10 grand a month, largely automated. Then you can, do your pottery or whatever in Thailand like all day. That's totally fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for the guys who are like, I want to make $100 million a year, but I don't want to do any work to do it. I don't know what books and blogs these guys are reading, but mostly they've probably just been buying into a lot of the internet marketer bullshit out there that says that that's possible. But bear in mind, that internet marketer who set up that sales page probably spent 80 hours tweaking that copy and that conversion funnel for that Facebook ad that you clicked on, that went to that sales letter, that went to that shopping cart, that bought that ebook that they wrote. That took them dozens, if not hundreds of hours to create.
Yeah.
And they are sitting there after every sale. They are writing all those newsletters. They are not working 4 hours a week. They're not working from the beach. That is a lie.
Right.
And I know this because I know a lot of the people who are the most successful people in that field, and they are the freaking busiest people in the world. They work 60 hours a week. They love what they do, but they're not working on the beach. That's just one of the ads you saw that you clicked on because it converts. It appeals to your laziness. Congratulations.
Yeah, that really is. It's an interesting thing, because I have a friend that basically teaches internet marketing, and they have a course and everything. And he says that of all the sales that they make, about 97% of people that buy their product and seemingly are intending to use it and build something never even open it, never even log in to use it. So that tells you it's this emotional thing, and people think they just want something that can be so easy that they don't even have to do any work to make money. And he says that it's not only that. He says that, I said, yeah, they just want to open it up and then have checks coming to them or something. And he's like, no, that's actually too much. They want us to go and deliver the checks to them and actually maybe even put it in their bank account for them. Like, that's the mindset of that whole idea of, like, making money from nothing. But I think that if you can look at it like there's a lot of things you can do out there that are, you put a ton of time into it for a short period of time, or a few weeks or a few months or whatever, and then after that you have it going, and then it's sort of on autopilot where you can let the checks come in after that point. But wanted to switch gears before we run out of time here, and you're a big traveler, and so am I, and so I've really enjoyed some of your stories that you have on your podcast. Can you talk about what your scariest experience traveling has been?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have had problems when I travel. I haven't for a really long time. I mean, recently, I actually take groups of people, especially young entrepreneurs, to North Korea. I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, actually, I listened to one of your podcasts where you guys were actually broadcasting from there, which is really, really cool. Yeah.
That place is fascinating. It's really neat. I'm actually going on a cycling tour of North Korea this coming year for anybody that might be interested in going. That's a brand new thing. It's really, really cool. I've never had any issues there. The funny part is I got kidnapped in Mexico. That was probably one of the scariest things that's ever happened. I was 20. I ended up getting picked up by a fake cab driver and driven all over the place outside of Mexico City. The guy wouldn't let me go. He eventually stopped in front of a house. And I remember watching like Oprah with my mom, like a decade and a half ago. And the guy's like, never go to the secondary location. And I'm like, oh my God, we're in the hood in Mexico City. This is totally that secondary location thing.
Yeah.
And the guy was like, if you end up at the secondary location, fight no matter what. This is the point where like it's worth dying because you're going to end up with worse at the secondary locations. I was like, oh my God, this is that time. So we had a little conflict, which I ended up obviously prevailing and ended up escaping from this guy. But I'm thinking to myself, you know what? If I had just been like, okay, I'll go in the house, who knows what would have happened? Yeah. So like that part, at that point in time, it was less scary because I ended up actually meeting my friend after that for drinks and being like, man, you wouldn't believe what just happened to me. It was crazy. But like me now, more than 10 years later, I'm like, holy crap, I was probably going to get like chopped into little pieces and boiled or something. Yeah. What was going to happen? A ransom or something insane. And it just ended up being a really, really scary story. I actually talk about the whole thing on a podcast recently. I want to say like my episode 99 or 101, I talk about being kidnapped. I've actually been kidnapped twice, and that was the first time. I'll leave the second one as a teaser for guys to go to the artofcharmpodcast.com and search for kidnapping. It's probably going to be a good search term for that. But I would say North Korea, you have a very low chance of anything happening because there's no crime there, and we're tourists, which means we're giving them a little bit of money, so they're really happy with us.
Yeah. I talk to people about North Korea sometimes, and they're like, wait, you can't go there, can you? So
yeah, you can.
You can go. So what do you fly to China and then book a flight from China, or?
Exactly. Like what we do, we fly from Beijing. We fly the North Korean national airline, which is actually not scary. It's operated by Air China, so it's not that big of a deal. Yes, it's probably not meeting FAA flight standards or whatever, but they don't have a really dismal flight history either. It's not like Aeroflot where they're like, hey, there's a hole in the engine, and someone's like, hey, man, you got chewing gum. Put it on this hole on the engine. They don't do that. Like they're still flying into and out of China. So China, yes, maybe not the most responsible aviation governing body either, but also it's not Turkmenistan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's relatively safe. We fly from China. We handle all the visa stuff. Here's the thing, North Korea gets into enough shit on its own that it's not looking for oh, you didn't have the visa T crossed and the I dotted, we're going to throw you in jail. They're kind of like, whatever. Remember, as strict as the place is, a couple bucks goes a long way unless they want to make a political statement out of you or you do something really dumb that they can't ignore.
Yeah.
But showing up, your visa's not correct. We've had that happen a couple times. It's really not that big of a deal. We straighten it out. They're not going to arrest you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and it's a good time. You go in there and sometimes they're like, you're American? That's insane. Aren't you scared being here? We're at war with you. And you're like, yeah, you're kind of the only people that think that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're like, welcome. I can't believe you came here. That's amazing. I'm so glad to have tourists from the United States who want to see the truth about our great country.
Yeah.
They're not like, we're going to kill you. It's not Iraq. It's not, there's no insurgency. You're in their turf. They're very Confucian. You're a guest. That's how it works, and so it's a really fascinating place, and they're very impressed. And yes, some people are actually scared of you because you're American when you go there, and usually they're scared of you because they've never seen white people in real life, depending on where you are.
Yeah.
Less so than, no one's going to walk up and be like, oh, Americans, I've been trying to kill one of you with my bare hands for my whole life. That's never going to happen.
Right.
People who do things like that have been in gulags, as not funny as that might be, have been in gulags for their whole life. People who are thugs, people who steal things, people who cause trouble for the regime are not anywhere to be found.
Yeah.
And that's a bad thing in and of itself, but it's a great thing for tourism because what it means is you can leave a bag full of money on the street and come back at the end of your tour and it will be there, and there'll probably be flowers placed in it to make sure that it doesn't go stale or whatever, sitting on the side of the road all by itself. It's that type of place due to its policies. So I'm not saying it's all sunshine and rainbows over there, of course. It definitely has the dark side, which is what makes it fascinating in the first place.
Yeah, so that's what brings you back there is it's just kind of this intriguing, bizarre, weird place.
Yeah, and it's one of those types of places where when you go there, you actually see changes. And it's one of those places where in our lifetime is going to change so much that it's going to be one of those places you read about in the news. It's one of the last sort of frontiers where there's no capitalism, no real capitalism, there's no internet. So if you know what's going on and you've got connections with people there and you know how to do business there, when it eventually opens up, companies will be paying tons and tons of money for people who can go, oh yeah, no, I know some people who work in this industry in Pyongyang. Why don't I just give them a call? And most of those people who have those connections, of course, are Chinese right now.
Yeah.
But imagine, there's going to be plenty of people who go, we need somebody who's Western, who knows people in North Korea. How many of those people are there? Probably not that many, a few dozen at best.
Yeah.
So, we're putting ourselves in a prime position to be able to do business with that place in the coming years when they're ready to do that. But in the meantime, I'm more than happy to check it out and get to know the country and the culture and the people in it because, quite frankly, it's off limits, and that's what appeals to me.
Yeah.
It's very, very esoteric. Any knowledge you have about the place is very, very rare, hard to come by. All we know is what we read in CNN, and even half of those people are just making shit up because there's no journalists allowed there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, really cool. What we need to do is get Bitcoin into North Korea and get them to start using Bitcoin and free it up, and then we're going to have this explosion in business and freedom, and it's going to be an awesome place.
I mean, you might be onto something. I think first they need a mobile phone network and maybe some internet, but Bitcoin would be a good follow-up to that. They don't even use regular currency right now to trade, so they're a little bit behind the times when it comes to that, but you might be onto something in the near future in any case.
Yeah, well, next time you go, make sure to take some Bitcoin info with you and just dole some out when you're there, and then they'll start to get interested in it.
Yeah, honestly, I see what you're saying, but let me phrase it like this. When I tell people, they don't have email or internet there, so
that is bizarre.
Like, imagine a world in which you go, hey, you know what, such and such thing was on Facebook. And they go, yeah, I've heard of Facebook, but I've never seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people I don't know about you, but when I'm on Facebook, I'll have somebody add me from Nigeria. And they're like, hello, want to make friends in America? And I'm like, no, dude, I don't know you.
Right.
They've never seen Facebook. There are people who go to internet cafes once a year and they start up a Facebook account. And they live in Sierra Leone in the jungle. Those people at least know what Facebook looks like because there's one guy in the village that has satellite internet because he works for an aid organization. They've seen it. North Koreans have never seen it. They've never seen Twitter. Most of them have never heard of it. They've never played a game online. They've never chatted online. They've never seen an email before. They've never made a call on a mobile phone or maybe any phone for that matter.
Yeah. Wow.
So
that is crazy.
It's insane. You know, a lot of people there have never seen white people in real life. And a lot of the people there who have electricity, the only white people they've ever seen are like Vladimir Putin on TV hugging Kim Jong-il, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't have electricity, which is about 95% of the country, then you don't have TV. If you see a white person riding a bicycle through your village, you're going to freak the hell out. And that's what I'm really counting on when I go on my cycling tour of North Korea. I think it's going to be hysterical.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait to hear about that. That sounds awesome, actually. So
well, you should join us. Couple spots left.
When is it?
We're doing one in August and possibly one in September. I'm not sure which one I'm going to be on, and probably not both. But we're going to see the Mass Games, which is the largest performance in the world and the largest stadium in the world. That's that thing you see on like YouTube where there's 80,000 people and they make animations in the background with the flip cards.
Yep.
And there's like crazy gymnastics. We're going to see that. We're going to bike through the mountains. You don't need to be in great shape at all.
Yeah.
It's really like, it sounds a lot harder than it is. We're not doing like 40 miles a day of hardcore biking. We're going to bike through a village, get on a bus, drive to the next one, bike through the village, get on a bus, drive to the next one. So it's not going to be insane, but we are going to check out the mountains, a mausoleum, a lot of the sites in Pyongyang, the coast. We're going to be hanging out, sleeping outside. We're doing a homestay where we sleep over at a North Korean's house, which is going to be crazy. It's the first time that people have done this.
Yeah.
So it's going to be really, really cool. And like I said, there's only a handful of spots left, but if this is the type of thing that you go, oh my God, I totally have to do this, then I would say reach out to me now, because by the time you hear this, there's probably going to be like a spot left, if anything. So, but we run tours there all the time. It's just they're not cycling tours. But if people want to go to North Korea, you know, if it's the type of thing that scares you a little bit but sounds really awesome, like, let's go.
Yeah. Yeah, really cool. That's awesome. Yeah, I love hearing this stuff. I mean, it seems like the world is just becoming more open all the time just because of people like you that are, you know, making things happen, you know, rather than just sitting and complaining about how everything is, you know, this country's scary or that country is, it's impossible to go to or whatever. You just go do it. Kind of cool.
Well, excellent.
So what else you got coming up? What are your goals with Art of Charm?
Well, we're going to be working a lot on our new branding. We're really getting rid of our old crappy website. We're branding ourselves much more as like a men's lifestyle business, which we've always kind of been, but hasn't necessarily been reflected that well by the branding. At first, we thought we had to compete in the same arena as all these pickup guys. But what we kind of realized is it's totally okay to invent your own industry, and it's totally okay to invent your own branding and marketing position within that. Like, we don't want to be known as the high-end pickup artist guys. We want to be something totally separate where they're like, yeah, the Art of Charm has elements of that, except for they're not D-bags. Like, we don't want people to even associate us with those guys at all. So we've rebranded the show. We're making some mobile apps. As soon as I could find a freaking Android developer that actually returns emails, that would be great. And, there's just a lot of stuff happening, and by way of just us trying to figure out ways to communicate with our audience better, to deliver more high quality content, to really keep the podcast and things like that going at full speed as well. And we just keep hiring, and we keep running our programs and keep changing the curriculum up. We've got a lot of guys coming through from special forces units and intelligence organizations, and what that does is sort of raise the bar for what we get to teach as well when you got a lot of higher quality clientele. So I'm really looking forward to that, and sort of putting the final nail in the coffin to like the get chicks, dude, type of curriculum, and much more of the here's how you network with expert people, here's how you deal with really difficult situations, here's how you get people to like and trust you. Those skills are just so much more valuable in the long run.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's cool. So, just to wrap it up, I've been talking to Jordan Harbinger of theartofcharm.com and theartofcharmpodcast.com. Jordan, it's been awesome having you on the show, and thanks so much, and good luck with everything you're doing.
Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Freedom Lovin' Podcast. To break free today, head on over to freedomlovin.com and download our free guide. 7 practical tips to living free in an unfree world.